Come read with me. Reading from Six of One, Half a Dozen the Other. My book, my autobiography. Next chapter, School Days. By the time I turned 5, I was eagerly anticipating my first year in Teague School. To a 5-year-old in a household of nearly a dozen people who had to share everything, having a desk all my own was quite a big deal. In the mornings, we would all walk to school together, but kindergarten was only a half day, so I had to learn to walk home alone. Kindergarten was so much fun for me. Each day, as the children settled into their seats, the teacher would lead us in a song. Good morning to you, good morning to you. We're all in our places with sun-shining faces. This is the way to start a new day. Following the song, we would salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. After the song and the flag salute, the real work of playing began. In the classroom was a miniature kitchen, boxes of toys arranged around the room, and stacks of books. There were blocks, toys, and dolls which helped to teach us sharing and relating skills. Outside the classroom door was a fenced-in play area just for our class. The playground was equipped with toys for swinging, climbing, crawling, digging, and building. These things were all painted brightly and were visually appealing. But to me, the best part of kindergarten was snack time. Each day, just before our nap, one of the pupils was designated to take the trip to the cafeteria. It was a big responsibility taking the little red wagon and the small brown envelope full of nickels to the cook, then returning with the small cartons of milk. We were given graham crackers by the teacher with our milk. After a song and a snack, we rested on our small rug mats. Since our school day lasted only until noon, I suspect the nap was more for the teacher's benefit than ours. As much as I loved school in those early years, it seemed we could never stay in one place long enough to advance to the next grade in the same school. And that became quite frustrating. Moving, just like having so many siblings, was a part of my life. It seemed like at least once a year we were packing up our stuff and taking it to a new location. Moving day was always a lot of work. By the time we arrived in the new residence, everyone was too tired to make dinner, so the moving day dinner tradition became Campbell's vegetable beef soup and crackers. There's nothing more restorative when you're exhausted than to sit down to a steamy hot bowl of vegetable beef soup. The hot, easy meal seemed to make the new dwelling more homey right from the beginning. We moved from the housing tract to a house far out in the foothills, 9 miles east of Clovis. While we were living in the foothills, we had many chickens. They were white pullets which were raised for eating and for laying hens. One morning as we got up, the yard looked as if it had snowed in little mounds. During the night, a weasel, or weasels, had invaded our yard and sucked the blood from all of our poultry, leaving the bodies strewn over the yard. The loss of the chickens was a devastating state of affairs. That was our food supply. It was in this house that I fell through the porch window and thumped my head. My parents, always eager to locate a place large enough to accommodate the growing family, moved us from the foothills back to a little house on a short driveway off of State Street in Highway City. They added a room onto the house and painted the house railroad yellow. Daddy must have gotten a deal on the paint. We all worked digging the yard out for the foundation. This was an arduous task, because a few inches below the surface of the yard was hardpan. It was next to impossible to dig. It was nearly as hard as rock. Once the room was finished, the work was forgotten, and I spent many hours at my friend's house playing. Another highlight of school was making new friends. Rosemarie, who was my best friend, also came from a large family. She was Hispanic and had several older sisters. They all had beautiful long black hair, which their mother styled each day in long ringlets. Rosemarie lived kitty-corner across a vacant lot from my house. It seemed at the time like a very long way to walk, but in reality was only a few yards. I had been exposed to sewing very young. Since Mama sewed all of our clothes, Often I would collect the scraps of cloth, lace, and elastic for my dolls. When I visited Rosemarie, I would take my dolls, the fabric scraps, and a few needles and threads so that Rosemarie and I could make clothes for our dolls. We made gathered skirts, shirts, dresses, and sometimes panties for them. Rosemarie received Humpty Dumpty magazines in the mail, and we had fun trying to read the short stories in each issue. Socorro was another friend from my early school years. She, too, was Hispanic or American Indian. She had long, thick black hair, which she always wore in a single braid that hung down her back. I never went to her house, but she and I walked home from school together. Along the road from the school to our home grew olive trees that dropped their greasy purple and black olives onto the road. Many of the students used the olives to write messages, initials in hearts, and sometimes bad words in the road. The olives left a permanent black stain wherever they were stepped on when used to write on the pavement. Some of the older children taunted the smaller ones while we walked home. For the most part, I had little problem in this area because Socorro and I walked together. However, one day she stayed home from school because she was ill. I had to walk home alone. I had barely left the school grounds when two men in a black sedan slowed down near me and asked if I wanted a ride. I said no and continued to walk. They drove away, but I was terribly frightened. My parents and teachers had often cautioned us not to talk to strangers or accept rides from anyone. I was so frightened, in fact, that I missed the turn to my street and became lost. I started to cry because I was alone and lost. It wasn't long before a girl from my class, who was a bit of a bully and larger than myself, began to taunt and tease me. "Stop crying, you big crybaby," she said. She did not know the reason for my crying, nor did she care. When I continued to cry, she pinched me really hard on the neck, twisting my skin in her fingers. It was very painful and only served to make me cry harder. The more I cried, the more she taunted. The more she taunted, the more I cried. Not only had I become completely lost, but I was being bullied the whole time. Fortunately, Rosemarie's father had picked her up from school that day. They noticed that I was not where I should be and took me home. I was relieved, but the terror of being lost stayed with me. A month before my 6th birthday, Christine was born. She had a round head and was mostly bald, but later she had golden blonde hair. She was so cute and cuddly, but trying to live in Frank's wake, she, like me, sort of got lost in the shuffle. School was my favorite activity in those days. I excelled in all that I attempted. At home, I lacked individual attention, especially positive attention. There was plenty of correction and rebuke from the parental side and far too many put-downs from the sibling side of my family. School was fertile ground in which I was able to flourish and develop my gifts. The positive attention from the teachers and the constant influx of challenges served to nurture my spindly, stunted self-esteem. The positive rewards of a job well done caused me to try harder and to go beyond what was expected of me. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Stevenson, I got an itch here. Mrs. Stevenson probably had more influence on me than any other teacher. She was pretty with blonde hair. She often traveled, so she would tell us of the places she visited. Her habit was to dress in bright colors, which I and all the children loved. While on a trip to Mexico, she had purchased an exceptionally pretty skirt, which she wore to class. It consisted of several horizontal ruffled bands of bright colors. It was gathered at the waist and very full at the hem. We were enthralled with her, and she moved us on to academic excellence. In her class, I was especially fond of the mimeographed worksheets that she provided for us to work on during the class time. Some of those were for art projects, others for math or reading exercises. They had a wonderful sweet smell from the blue mimeograph ink. The first thing I would do upon receiving mine is put it to my nose and take a long, wonderful sniff of the aroma. If any extra worksheets were left, she would place them in a basket at the back of the classrooms. These could be taken home by any child who wanted them for extra work. To me, it wasn't like extra work. I loved to learn. I took them every chance I got. I wonder now, if they had not smelled so good, if I would have felt the same. I probably would have. I still love to learn. Mrs. Stevenson must have been a master of creativity and inspiration. I decided then that I too would someday be a teacher. She made teaching look like fun instead of work. It was she who first recognized that I possessed artistic talent. A few well-chosen words of praise from her lips encouraged me to develop my artistic abilities. The scene is still vivid in my mind. I was seated in a second row from the south side of the classroom near the door. My seat was the fourth desk from the front. This day was free time for art, and we were allowed to do whatever we wanted. I was in the process of creating a picture with crayons of a house complete with the proper roof lines, doors, and windows, and smoke coming out of the chimney. The grass was green, a tree with red apples and a brown trunk took up the right side of the paper. There were flowers and bright colors. No doubt it was a pretty typical picture for a 6-year-old. But Mrs. Stevenson saw some potential. Her simple comment inspired me. "Oh, we have an artist here." I was pleased with her praise. Had she said that I might someday be a movie star, I would have undoubtedly tried to be one, just to please her. From that moment on, art was my favorite subject at school and my favorite pastime at home. Second grade was a little less inspiring, and I remember little about it. The thing I do remember the most is recess. I wanted so much to play tetherball with the older kids and was not allowed to. It was a year of jacks on the concrete, marbles in the dirt, and sitting under the huge eucalyptus trees at the south edge of the school property, making necklaces from the cone-shaped seed pods that fell from them. Second grade was when the reading really began. There were reading circles where each child took turns reading from Dick and Jane books. See Jane run. Run, Jane, run. Jane can run fast. I was a good reader and enjoyed the reading sessions. However, I was always impatient to finish the book so that I might move on to the next one. Surprise. Waiting for the rest of the class to learn what I already knew was frustrating for me. My first exposure to dirty words was written on the school wall was during my second grade year. Though I could not quite read them yet, the older siblings made sure that I knew they were bad words and not to say them. My parents often watched the classified ads in the newspaper for auctions where they could get bargains for the household. One time they purchased the whole candy section in a grocery store. Our freezer was full of candy bars, fruit stripe, blackjack gum, and other candies. That year they purchased 200 yards of polished cotton chintz fabric in a variety of solid colors for 10 cents a yard. This was a tremendous find for a family with so many children, especially since so many of us were girls. Mama made most of our clothes. Although I do not know how she found the time. She sewed so well that I'm sure most people did not know that our clothes were homemade. Often we would have identical clothes to the other children, except theirs had been store-bought. However, as children often do, I usually felt inferior simply because I knew we could not buy ready-made clothes. Joyce and I were a month shy of 2 years apart, and many people thought we were twins. She had been born on March 11th, 1948. I was born February 17th, 1952. We both had red hair, although hers was naturally curly and mine was hopelessly straight. Most people did not know the difference because my hair was usually permed. Mama often dressed us alike. She used the polished cotton fabric to make us matching leather brown jumper dresses with brown and white print blouses to match. We must have been awfully cute with our red hair and shiny brown jumpers. But of all the clothes she made for me, my favorite was the red and white polka dot dress with a white collar. It was the dress I always chose when I dressed myself. I loved it even more when I saw a classmate wearing an identical dress that had been purchased at a department store. Our clothes were sort of rationed because we had so few. Since school dresses were also used for church, we were never allowed to play in them. We girls were forever tearing out the waistlines of our play clothes. It was not unusual for us to have the waist crudely pinned together until wash day when repairs were made. I did not care for the rule about the play clothes because our play dresses were usually dog-eared and stained. We only did laundry on Saturday. Since clothes were in very short supply, it wasn't unusual for them to be slightly less than clean until wash day. One day, upon arriving home from school, I failed to change into my play dress. Instead, I had stuffed it behind the bed so that it could not be found. My thinking had been that if the dress was lost, I could wear my school dress for the rest of the day. When Mama asked why I hadn't changed, I claimed that I could not find my play dress. She wasn't buying that. It never occurred to me that she may have been in the room earlier while I was at school and seen the dress on my bed. She promptly sent me back to my room to find it. I felt so guilty about telling that lie that even though she did not punish me, I never lied to her again, except once. Second grade, academically, is somewhat vague in my memory, but I do remember standing near a water fountain during recess and one of the other teachers, saying what pretty hair I had. She said I looked like Goldilocks. I took it as a rarely received compliment. I did not like my name Violet. And though adults often complimented me on such a pretty name, I preferred Goldilocks. Teague School was rather small, but housed grades kindergarten through 8th grade. Each year, the school put on a talent contest with the students from all the grades participating. One of the consistencies at our home was singing. Mama taught us all to sing. It was one of the few things we had that did not cost anything and brought hours of entertainment. We had been exposed to or allowed to sing Had we been exposed to or allowed to sing secular music, we might have had a fortune in music. I suppose it was her idea that we should enter the contest. My guess is that she hated to miss an opportunity to showcase our talents or to witness to others about Jesus. Randall, who was 12 at the time, sang the old rugged cross. When the evening was over, on the ride home, I made a typical little sister comment about his singing. I said that he sounded like a frog. In actuality, he had done a good job. I always regretted saying that because it probably injured his feelings. As he grew, he developed a wonderful bass voice. Randall often teased us, and I should have been able to reciprocate, but I tended to take things too seriously. It hurt me to hurt others. Fonda, on the other hand, had never been able to carry much of a tune. Mama refused to give up on her and tried with little success to teach her soprano, then alto, then tenor, and again soprano. Sometimes she would do fairly well until someone tried to harmonize with her. Then she would lose her place and trail off into the range of the other singer. Fonda, who was 11, Joyce, who was 9, and I, at 7, sang a trio in the talent contest that year. With Mama playing the piano, two of us would face the third one and sing the question, "How did you feel when you came out of the wilderness? Came out of the wilderness, came out of the wilderness. How did you feel when you came out of the wilderness, walking with the Lord?" The person we sang to would then sing an answer, replete with motions, one of the following answers. I felt like a praying, I felt like a preaching, I felt like a singing when I came out of the wilderness. Singing when I came out of the wilderness, walking with the Lord. As the preacher, had a Bible in my hand and a pointed finger, which I shook as I sang my part. Joyce, on the other hand, on bended knees with hands folded and face pointing upward, was the prayer, as Fonda was the singer. The audience loved it. We each took home 25 cents for our efforts. Mama had a way of finding unusual and often challenging pieces of music, which she taught us. The only music we were taught or allowed to sing were gospel songs. She was giving us a heritage that would last us a lifetime. However, teaching us must have been extremely trying for her. She would gather us all around behind her at the piano to practice, playing the music time and again. She taught us to sing harmony, and in the process, we learned to sight read music. Invariably, we girls would get the giggles and waste most of our practice time. Honestly, I do not know what we found so funny. Any little thing could send us into fits of laughter. Usually, Mama would simply tell us to quit being so silly. That never worked. I suppose that she did not discipline our lack of cooperation at the piano more severely because it was the one bright spot in our otherwise difficult existence. When we had nothing else, we had a song. Often, Mama went about her work, humming some familiar hymn or chorus. She wrote a few songs as well. We sometimes sang one she wrote called "Father, Forgive Them." It was a testimony to the way she lived her life. "Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. Their eyes are blind, they know not that I belong to you. And what they do unto me, they do as unto you. Father, forgive them, they know not what they do." We often sang specials in church, quote, specials, either in groups or, in my case, solos. I do not remember Dee singing in church, probably because she always hated being there. But she probably did. She had a wonderful voice. Randall, Fonda, Joyce, and I sometimes sang in a quartet, and Fonda and Joyce and I sang in a trio. Randall sang bass, Joyce alto, Fonda the melody, and I sang contralto or high soprano. I have a natural God-given gift for harmony and easily pick up on high parts in most songs. The song all of us hated with a passion, but Mama made us learn was "Oh, Those Golden Bells." I don't know why she liked that song so much. We all despised it. She seldom taught us to sing the popular, trendy Christian music, but older classic hymns, especially the most difficult to sing. She was not content just for us to sing. She wanted us to be challenged to excellence. I dreamed of someday becoming an opera singer. I had a very wide range. I could sing most any part from contralto to tenor to bass. All the children in their turn became part of the singing group. Dorothy was born shortly after beginning of school year in October 1957. She was the baby of the family at that time, and she played her part well. She was round and chubby, red-headed, and cute as could be. In 1961, when she was 3, we had an old Italian neighbor who thought she was really special. The children were usually out in the yard when they came to see us. I remember one time he came to visit. Dorothy must have been about 2 years old. She had on a little dress gathered at the waist and a saggy cotton diaper hanging loosely around her knees. Nick picked Dorothy up and gave her a sniff and said, "Phew, stink. No good for barbecue." Every time he came to visit, if one of the little kids were outside, he would go through the same routine with them. His name was Nick Lanota. He smelled of strong wine, and his greeting was always the same. "I'm a Nick Lanota. I'm a 73 years old." He was our neighbor for 5 or 6 years. I suspect Nick must have at least been 85 or 90 because he could barely walk. He had the stoop, slow, careful shuffle of a very old man. All the years we knew him, he told us he was 73 years old. Perhaps he was one of those people with Alzheimer's who only remember a certain time or day. Nick had an unusual taste in food, and he sometimes picked dandelions from our yard to make salads. They are very healthy. I have eaten them too as an adult. Once he took a large pot of soup for our family, cooked a large pot of soup for our family. That was some of the best I've ever tasted. The soup was much like a minestrone, but had wild mushrooms and small squid in it. We had never eaten anything so exotic, and it was wonderful. Sometimes I remember the aroma of that soup and wish someone had taken the initiative to get the recipe.